coughing now. Good evening, everybody, and a very warm welcome to a Lyceum evening coming to you from the Paul Spiritualist Church on the south coast of the UK. We've got a wonderful guest tonight. All our guests are wonderful. I'm so grateful for these brilliant people who give up their time to pop in and have a chat, have a conversation. So we have the lovely Ewan Irvine with us tonight from sunny Edinburgh. Ewan, good evening, sir.
It's just not warm. This is just practically tropical up here. I mean, what can I say? We've never had weather like this.
Or anything over 15 degrees and you will start melting up there, don't you?
I could take my jumper off.
No, you're right. You're right. It's before the watershed.
No, it's absolutely roasting, but nice.
Yeah, we've got the same. We're currently basking in 27 degrees at this time of night on the south coast.
Oh,
Sorry?
We're down to 23. I'm just looking at my outside thermometer. So you got 4 degrees on us.
Not 3 degrees.
Not 3 degrees.
Baby. Anyway, yeah. Moving on before I ruin the evening completely. Just before we went live, we said, what are we going to talk about? And I said, well, I've got no idea. So this is fun. It's always interesting, these evenings. There is a topic in my mind. And this... Yeah, I just find it an interesting question of how relevant is the philosophy, the religion of spiritualism in today's world with what we are facing out there. I think there's something, because I've been mindful very much of what's going on over in Gaza, very, very much, to the point of attending protest marches over it. Because it's wrong. It's wrong. And we're seeing, and this is not just in spiritualism, this is all over social media. People are remembering events from the past and everything. But people are very reluctant to sort of engage in events of today and opinions. It's almost like we've got frightened to say anything or overly cautious. So, do we feel muzzled? Today's world? Do we feel like, we want to say something, but for the fear of causing offence, we're not? And also, how does this sort of energy integrate with what we regard as spiritualism, our beliefs, our core principles? Ewan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think social media is a wonderful thing, and also can sometimes be hell on earth, so to speak, as well. Because, and I speak from the counselling sense as well, because there are many people that look on social media, what about friends are doing, family are doing, and there's almost a sort of pretense with some people, taking photos and it's got to have the latest gear or the way it's posed in some sort of wonderful climate or holiday. And then, of course, if people do post something or have a view, then, of course, you're inviting comments from everything to agree with you, to... You could get slated or whatever. And the problem is that when we start to see comments, we have this thing about wanting to read them.
Yeah.
Rather than ignore them, we have to read them. And I think it's probably in the last year that I don't look at comments now, to be honest. It's something I've kind of done. And move that mindset to, I kind of don't care about the comments, actually. So there's that, but there is that fear of posting something or posting anything. I don't know, there's something about social media that's kind of done that. And of course, we see all the spiritual stuff as well, all the spiritual type adverts and things. And what actually amazes me now is the amount of stuff that comes up about workshops, which is another thing. And those, you and I going back, we look at I suppose the training on mediumship, and you started off really in the church, in the circle, making the tea, the coffee, supplying the biscuits, setting up. You had to do all this as part of your. It wasn't just about the mediumship; it was about supporting the church as well. And I think I see some very, very good workshops that coming up with some very respected folk. And then I kind of look at some of the adverts about we can make you a medium in 6 weeks or 6 months. And I think, really? and I do sometimes find myself coming a bit close to putting a comment on, but I've not as yet.
I think we all need a phantom profile.
Yes.
Similar to you, I always say this, I stick by this. I am an old school spiritualist, and I stick by what I know, because everything that I do and everything that I practice and educate on is evidential. And I don't just mean the mediumship. In the philosophy, we can bring out these wonderful nuggets of truths for us at that time. It's not going to be everybody's truth. That's fine. But I do get a little bit concerned when I see a lot of other practices coming in under the spiritual banner.
Yeah.
And you just look at them. I have a class of workshops which I call, what do I call them? It's all right. It's not a rude word. Vanity workshops, and I call them vanity workshops because they're not going to actually stretch the people in there. It's not like, if you go in for an evidential mediumship workshop or a philosophy, you've actually got to produce something which will give people a gauge then of the measure of how well that's achieved or not. But you do get other workshops where you don't actually produce anything. So you can be there all day and partake in this, that, and that and everything, but there's no sort of measure there. And sometimes I look at these things and I just think, no, that's fine. That's fine. People want to go along with them. But I do get a little bit scratchy when it's portrayed under the spiritualism banner.
And I think there's something about that old school and that proper sitting in the circle with other folk and the experienced folk going back as well, who's sitting it and coming together and sitting together in person. There's something about that I don't think you can beat.
Oh, yeah, very much.
And at the end of the day as well, some of the, I've seen some workshops and things where folk charge £1,000, £1,500, and I think, actually go along to your spiritualist church, and you'll get or a workshop that they are doing or someone that is recommended. But the spiritualist church, when you think about it, the circle and seeing how other mediums work and go along and helping the church as well, it's all part and parcel of everything. And I think maybe we've lost that a little bit. Maybe there's something about the word spiritualist church. I don't know. But
that is always going to be a topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So very quick. Sorry, we got a bit broken up there, Ewan. Lovely Trish. Good evening. Evening all. Thank you, Laurie, for bringing up the issues in Gaza. This has been on my mind daily, and yes, I attend protests too about this. That's good to hear, Trish. That is good to hear, because as I say, we see in the post, I don't see anything really of relevance to today. You know, we've just gone through the anniversary of 7/7, and there was so many posts about that, and quite rightly too, remembering people. Quite rightly, but what about, you know, what's troubling us today? What's happening outside our door today? And what's forming the world for our kids going forward? Not that we've got any, but you never know. We might adopt somebody. Do you fancy adopting somebody, Ewan?
Not really, no.
No. But yeah. So we've got all sorts of topics going on here tonight. So this is interesting. Go on.
Well, I think there is that fear as well, and again that comes through, I think, quite a bit about the counselling field's work as a counsellor, but also the spiritual field as well, that we have come to that time where, you know, there is the prospect of humanity destroying itself as a result of one little accident or something that's deliberate there. And so we face that prospect of when things like World War III are mentioned again, and it is a fear.
Yeah, very much. And fear, as we know, is a very degrading energy. It affects us mentally, physically, morally, on so many levels. So where can we find that solace, that succor, that empowerment from spiritualism? Because it's there, isn't it?
I always liked, and this is going way back, and we were asked to, and I wish I could remember who did this, but it was an excellent exercise that they did. But they got us to look at the word spiritualism. What's the most important part of that word? We have spirit, spiritual, spiritualism. And then someone said, what about that wee ism at the end? And we were going, the ism? That wee ISM? What's the ism got to do with it? And they said, well, that ism stands for inside me, spiritual inside me. And I wonder if that's something that, as time goes on, we are all looking at that maybe more in depth and more trying to get in tune with that spiritual inside each and every one of us. And we're all individuals. So how do we find that spiritual for each and every one of us? And is it through that the philosophy? Is it through that meditation? Is it trying to enjoy our lives here? Because there are always two words that we use in life, and it's probably not what you think I'm about to say there. I'm not going to be rude. It's the what if. What if?
Oh, that one.
That one, yeah. I mean, others can be used, but it's the what if. So a lot of the time we go on, what if I do that? What if we did this? What if we did that? And I think that comes very much into mediumship, because when someone passes, we often have many questions about that. You know, I wish I had said goodbye. I never got the time. What if I'd said this? What if I'd done that? And I think mediumship's very important at sometimes addressing that, because it's our loved ones that come forward and maybe answer some of these questions that we didn't get the answers for. In some way gives closure and that goodbye here. And then, of course, we worry about, what if this happens? What if that happens? And somehow we forget about today. You know, too busy thinking about the past, the future. There's nothing really we can do about the future, but what about today? How do we be spiritual in today?
Yeah, that's so true. And it's sad, isn't it? Because we live our life, and the challenges we find in our lives, although they are big to us at the time, they suddenly fall and pale into insignificance when we meet. Well, the real challenge, when somebody is no longer here.
Mm.
After I always remember we had a lady here at the church, and every time you mentioned a relative of hers, up would go the barriers. Yeah, 25 years ago, And then she kept getting messages from him, and she said to me, "Do you think he's passed?" And I said, "Well, it would appear so." And she said, "Oh God," she said, "if only I'd said sorry." And I thought, do you know what? We keep hearing this time and time and time again. We're very quick to take that stance, but we're very slow to just imagine changes of circumstances.
Yes. And I think that's a really good point you made, because looking at the mediumship, and yes, it is proof of survival, that's what we're bringing through. But is it part of that healing relationship? Is that the evidence and the conversation that from the spirit world and the person here, can it produce some sort of healing? That I think there's almost a deeper level in many ways.
Oh, very much, very much. And I'm also a very big believer that the healing is not only for us here, but also for spirit side.
Yeah.
We get on very well, but imagine if I had a wobble and fell out with you, Ewan, and then I went over. One of the things I would want to do is come back and say, "Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I'm really sorry. We've been really."
I might wobble and head over first.
Try not to.
I'll try not
to. But yeah, it's about getting the perspectives in. And I wonder if this thing about perspectives actually stops us integrating with the world in general. Do we look at things from our perspective of our world and thinking, well, not consciously thinking, because once you challenge that, if you say people consciously thought, well, it's all right in my world, so I don't care, people will be very offended by that and very challenged by that as well.
Do you know, I was watching a program at Friends last week, and I can't remember what it was called because it just came on their TV, but it was about a woman. She was an artist in, I think it was Southern Ireland, and she'd bought this shell of a house. And of course, like many of these programs, there's a budget. No one's ever kept within the budget. Always goes way, 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 way over.
Yeah.
She had the plans to bring this house back and keep its spirituality in many ways and some of its history here. But of course, there was money issues, and she was in rented accommodation and had to move out, and then and everything. But what was great was the way in that small town everyone rallied round. Someone gave her a studio just above the flower shop. Someone else came and did stuff in the house. And it was all, and I think in one respect, she did a painting for somebody, but it was all, everybody came together. And I remember the presenter saying, that's what everyone should do. That's what should all be doing, is just coming together and just helping. And she made that point, herself, had it not been for the kindness, had it not been for everybody, just that little bit, someone coming along and helping sort the garden and things, and it's that sense of community. Have we lost that sense of community? Have we lost that sense of community and spiritualism as well?
Interesting. I love the big build programs, and I find them quite emotional. Because you link into that energy. There was one in particular where they overhauled all these houses in the streets to make accommodation for ex-veterans. And oh my goodness, I was howling at the end of it because it was just all these just people. That was the wonderful thing. Nobody came there, with their entourage or, we helped out at a Christmas Day lunch once a few years ago at the Salvation Army, and the local dignitary were there. And one year the local dignitary just came in, stood there, photo. Bye everybody, have a nice Christmas. The following year, hats off to them, the local dignitary and their family all came in and mucked in. And I just thought, wow, what a difference. What a difference. So much fun. But yeah, that community. So in spiritualism, what does that teach us about community? Because, we get this unending fact that we're all connected, that we're all the same. It doesn't matter where we are. It doesn't matter if we're pink, blue, green, white, yellow. It doesn't matter. We're all connected. We are all the same. We're from the same. We return to the same. Yes, we've got different thoughts. Yes, we have different language, customs, whatever. But that inherent spark of the divine in everybody is the same. So how do we propagate that?
I think that's a very, very difficult one to answer. And I think that's where everybody, and we bring in churches of all religions up and down the country, what is that community? What does that community look like? Because, the congregations of all churches are getting older and older. We know that. I think a little less in spiritualism, actually. I think there's younger folk coming in. And what I do like is it's not just about the mediumship. It is about the healing, the philosophy. We're looking a lot more at the spiritual self, the psychic, and all different things, the holistic approach. And I think that's what's good. But what does a church give now? What if someone becomes, and I'm not just talking about spiritualism, I'm talking about all faiths and all churches and centres. What is provided, and how do we go into the modern age? And I think that's a difficult one, and I don't know if anyone's got the answer.
I think that's an answer to be found locally on local levels, because every community is different. Every community has its own highs and lows, and areas where it can excel, or areas. So, but I think the core essence is looking to build that community within. But even in that act, we've got to be very mindful, because I'm sure you've come across this, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, you go to some places and the community is a bit like the Berlin Wall as it was. If you, even the first time in a church, and I've had this as a medium, you walk in, everybody turns and looks at you, and you can hear them going, "Is that him? Yeah, I think that's him. Oh yeah, all right then. Oh, what's he like?" And it's just like, "Hi, I'm here."
Well, what I do think is a good change, an excellent change, is the way that I think men are now exploring spirituality, and that there is a holistic self, and it's you know, thank God we moved away from or moving away from those days when it's like men don't cry, what are you, a man or a mouse? And we grow up with that integrated value kind of thing, and it's something that's there, and I'm so glad that is starting to shift there, and that we're looking at everything from men's mental health to actually saying it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to explore those spiritual things. I always kind of call it a toolbox.
Yeah.
Don't get that. We can have these things that we take out of it, whether it's everything from that relaxation to mindfulness to exploring that, it's okay not to be okay, but what do we pick from that? So maybe again in spiritualism, is that maybe that toolbox again is important to each and every one of us. What can we take from that? Very
true. Lots of people joining in. Thank you, everybody online tonight. On a personal note here, Tim was disappeared. Why is that not working? Oh, there we go. They're all over the place. Jeff Jones from Welsh Wales. Good evening, Jeff. Great topics this evening. I'd love to open a discussion on the importance of bringing philosophy back into our services. Could the church committees consider making it more central part of a Sunday evening or divine services? It feels like philosophy has become somewhat overlooked on many of our platforms. These days, we often hear a poem or a personal story about someone's journey into spiritualism. I'm totally there with you on that statement, Jeff, which has its place, but we seem to have lost the depth. I'm going to go for depth because that word's just got cut off. Well timed, Jeff, because this was actually in the conversation we've been having.
Sorry. Again, I think there is something about that depth of philosophy, and also that depth of mediumship as well. And are we scared in some way to go to that depth, or does philosophy kind of got lost somewhere in the whole thing? Because at the end of the day, mediumship, it will touch the person we're giving a message to, however many folk are there. But philosophy should touch everybody. And it has a greater impact.
Yeah. I proved this in a circle quite a few years ago. There were several members of the circle who had been, so the circle was on a Tuesday evening. On the Sunday before, several of the members of the circle had been to the service, and two of them had had messages. And when I asked them what their messages were, it was very vague description. I think it was me gran, not any real recall of the message. But when I asked what the philosophy was about, everybody was suddenly very animated. Oh, yeah, it's about this and said that. And I said, do you see that, the impact?
Yeah.
Sadly, I've taken out mediums. We've got this bit of a grey area in our development places that people are going to development circles and making that jump between coming out of circle and going on the platform. There seems to be this area that we probably should pay a little bit more attention to.
And I think it's I mean, I've seen so many people, as I said earlier, that's done that make me a medium quick course.
Yeah.
Fast track. And first of all, I think, really? And then you just see it all go wrong.
Yeah. because it's not just the mediumship, is it? It's how to. There's so many skills we need when we're up on the platform, and as I say, we have this hinterland between developing mediums in circles to getting those mediums then out working and serving the churches and centres. And I will quite happily take out people that I know that are going through that process to help them along. They get an introduction to churches. They get that experience of sitting out on the platform. And I love doing that because, as I say, I recognise that this area is a little bit neglected. But two ladies I took out recently, I was saying about philosophy, and they were both like, "Oh no!" And I said, "You have to do philosophy. If you don't do philosophy, you're not going to be a platform medium. It's as simple as that." Well, no, we weren't taught philosophy, and I said, "Well, in your circle, did they never touch on philosophy?" They said, "No, because they said, don't worry about the philosophy because you'll only be demonstrating messages and not doing philosophy."
And where's the spirituality? Where's the depth?
I understood what they were saying because we see more and more the emphasis on the dem. I understand it, but also inside I'm going, no, where's the depth?
And and there's something about that, spending that time and looking at philosophy and the mediumship and bringing everything in, and I think there's something that did scare me a wee bit earlier on years ago about the philosophy, but now it's something I just really love because you just don't know what they're going to bring through or come through. And you might have that little idea or a word or something you're going to talk about, and then it just completely changes. And I think that's what I love about it. And of course, hearing other folks and mediums' philosophy as well. And there's something very good or something very much inspired. And I know we're talking about readings and different things, but some of what I love, the powerful readings that someone's been inspired and they have written that, from spirit, and to then bring that or allow spirit to bring that into the philosophy is something else. So
Yeah, that's very true. We struck a nerve here tonight on philosophy. Lovely Matt. Hello, Matt. Hope you're well. Evening, Laurie, Ewan, and everyone. Great conversation tonight. The philosophy of spiritualism brings me much solace and reassurance, especially now.
Yeah.
Just need more of it. That's interesting. Thank you, Matt. Especially now.
I think that said it all.
Yeah. It's really good to hear that we are touching on today's energy. Here's wee Doug.
Oh, he's Bart. You'll have heard something outside. He's gone onto his guard dog persona.
He's a moth.
Yep. So I'll just leave him. But I'm also looking after my brother's dog as well. So when one barks, usually the other starts as well. So we could have a full chorus of dogs philosophizing in some way with the barking. But anyway, no, I think Matt's can't add to that. I think that said it all.
Yeah, and it's encouraging. We know Matt used to come to Paul. We have this thing, don't we, in spirit? Oh, we've got to get the youngsters in. We're very fortunate down here in Poole because we go out into the community and we have a very varied age group within our congregation. And it is wonderful having all these different age groups coming in, but we've also got to remember that when we're getting in different age groups, we're going to have different things happen. Like the lovely Matt was with us in Poole for quite some time, worked as a healer here, and had to move because of work. And that's fine.
Mhm.
That's part of the evolution of life. It's lovely to see, but it just always struck me, and I was thinking, yeah. We keep saying we've got to get the youngsters in, but part of that is we're then going to be in this state of flux because people need to move around. People need to do whatever.
And unfortunately, as well, that's the modern world we live in. That busyness and everything changing, and it's and in a way, I guess it's quite a frightening world as well for a lot of folk, because the times, they are a changing, and I'm not too sure for how long they'll get worse or perhaps get better, but it's the unknown. And philosophy, I think, again, there's something about that message from Spirit, or that philosophy, that perhaps in some way gives us that little bit of hope, or that little bit of explanation, or I don't know. But it's something that's very much needed. And again, I come back to possibly a lot more important than the mediumship at the moment.
Very much, yeah. And I'd always look for the demonstrators here at Poole, that they can do what I call the job.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that job is being able to deliver philosophical or inspired thoughts that will help people navigate and understand a wee bit more of today's world. Because in my view, a lot of the things or challenges that we face, there's nothing new. You know, the current situation, this is nothing new. The basic energies are the same. It's people with money, with power, doing everything to maintain that they keep hold of that. And the people underneath doing everything to resist. This has gone through history. Yeah. Different people, different.
And it'll keep going and going and going. Yeah. And somehow, in the meantime, we've kind of all got to fit in wherever that fitting in that big jigsaw puzzle is.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. So, here's a good one. Lovely Eve. What philosophy book can you recommend?
Do you know, off the top of my head, my mind has gone absolutely blank there. And I've got tons of books. I've got bookshelves of books and books and books through there. I'm not one. I've never been one for one that has all these big words that I can't understand. Yeah. I'm just no good at that. I've got to have a dictionary and start looking at things. And so I've always got to have words quite easy. I think, do you know, for me, actually, and I'll tell you about a book I've ordered in a minute. For me, the philosophy, I think, comes down to it's about the experiences we have in life, the experiences that people have, and our relation to spirit and the spiritual here as well. And for instance, I mean, it's something very close to my heart, because my mother died of, she had dementia. But the news presenter and TV presenter, Fiona Phillips, who sadly at a young age has got quite far advanced Alzheimer's. And there's a book that I think she started writing, and then with her husband as well. And I've ordered that book because for me, that's about life. That's someone's journey of life. And even through the ages, so whether it's a biography or autobiography or history of the times, I always think that's something that's just really, really important. If we're looking at books that we would think would be very much of a spiritualism or written by spiritualism, you could go down some of the more historical books and the philosophy going back in the the early days, and I think there's something about that history of spiritualism.
Yeah.
And I think that is something, and we look at, for instance, the SNU, for instance, and people will have various thoughts about that. But I think one of the good things and one of the excellent things about, working with them and learning with them is you are looking at the philosophy, you are looking at the history of spiritualism. So there's something about that as well I don't think you can get elsewhere.
And I think when I started off,
You okay?
excuse me.
Hay fever coming back again.
So and so this year.
And for a moment, I thought you were going to have that wobble and thought, oh, he's away.
When I first started off in development, one of my teachers pushed me very much to learn philosophy. So I went out very much with the approach of what book is going to teach me philosophy. And I remember picking up many books and starting to read them and just thinking, no, can't go along. No, don't like this. No, this is rubbish. And it took me quite a while to learn that the philosophy is from you.
Yeah.
It's not, you may find something inspirational that will inspire you to deliver your philosophy. Once I learned that, then over time, as my understanding grew, my mind was often taken back to books that I dismissed and thinking, well, actually, now I understand this, so I can't dismiss that any longer because it fits. But at the time, I would go into something like Silver Birch and read those books because the philosophy is going to come from you. It's a stirring of your mind and your soul that will deliver that philosophy. But to get that going, we need that catalyst. And as I say, Silver Birch is a very good beginner's introduction to different philosophical thoughts.
Yes.
So we have a lovely...
No, one of, I think, a really good book, and I discovered the author when I was training in counselling, but it talks about the stages of mourning that we go through, the 5 stages of mourning, and it's never a linear path, but Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who also had that belief in life after death and spirituality. But there's a lot in that book that looks at life and the stages that we go through in that spirituality. And there's also a book about her journey as well. And for me, I think that was one of probably the best books I read on the human experience and what other people have faced as well. And, because we are, in that evidential mediumship, we are dealing with grief, whether it's long past, current, or just happened. And we are, at the end of the day, dealing with somebody's emotions, whatever that may be. And it can be everything from denial, anger, acceptance, guilt, a whole lot. And none of it's wrong. Everybody has that personal journey through grief. And your faith is tested as well. And we have so many questions, etc. And again, I think that's where that philosophy comes in as well. There's something that can just touch us, help us, and in many ways. And again, yes, it's, the mediumship message, it's nice to get that proof. it is always going to be part of spiritualism. It's important to give that proof, but the philosophy is just as, if not more important.
Definitely. So the lovely Reverend Ashley, hello, darling. And she says, I remember when Laurie took me out with him to a church in a mentor capacity, and he gave me an on-the-spot Bible reading, and then I offered a spiritual address from that. Great old school techniques I still use today. Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, I do remember. There was one church in particular, and they used to have a wonderful evening. This is well before COVID, first time I ever came across it. And it would be, you would deliver like a short address. You would then do questions and answers. And then you would do a spot of evidential mediumship. And I used to love that format. And I remember taking Ashley and Carla and a few others because it gave so many opportunities to those getting out there on the platform, because it's a big step from your circle to standing in front of people. It's a huge step. And when I've seen people thrown in at the deep end, and some have floundered and some have survived, that's fine. But it shouldn't be that trial, that baptism of fire. Because the standard service is like, what, an hour and 20 minutes. And the good old chair, out of that hour and 20 minutes, they probably only take 10 minutes. So the medium suddenly has got an hour and 10 minutes to fill with prayer, with reading, with philosophy, with communication. And it's a lot of work. So these little shorter services, because that evening used to just be an hour long, it was great to get that first steps out into working with people out of the comfort of the circle.
And as we always say, there isn't that script. There's nothing there in front of us. And, you know, any sort of service, you want to get round as many folk as possible. I mean, you want to, but you have to have, you know, a meaningful message, which does take time. I mean, it's not just, I've got your father here, he says hello, give a little proof and move on to the next person. What does that do? You know, it's spending that time in a conversation. And yes, you might only get round 6, 7 people, maybe at a service, but within that, there's got to be the quality.
Very much.
And the depth. You know, I'd feel, you know, I've watched the odd person or even had a message. Well, actually, I remember someone saying, actually, in a dem to me, I've got your mum here. She had a long illness. I think they mentioned a name connected to her. I think they mentioned the age, and just the fact that she's there, she's looking after you. Moved on to the next person, and I thought, I felt, I think my mother would have had a little bit more to say than that, you know. I don't know. I have to say the medium was never invited back to the church again, but but that's the way it was. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's been mindful and but the message has to have some depth, and I guess if that takes a bit longer, it takes a bit longer.
Yeah. Jeff Jones pops in, and he's saying, surely the committees, especially the booking secretaries, have responsibility when book mediums. Some Sunday service is all about the message. Philosophy touches the very soul, and each can take something home with them. If they can't off philosophy, then stop booking them. Ideally, Jeff, yes, I agree with you 100% there. However, there is a caveat. Unfortunately, the message has become the be-all and end-all of spiritualism in many places. For the last 25, 30 years, it's become the sole focus in many places. I don't know if you've had this, Ewan, but you've done a service or a dem, and at the end, the chair people have said, "Oh, that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Next week we've got a really good medium."
Oh, yeah.
And you just stand there and go, "Really? I must come down then and learn how it's
also
done."
yeah, we've got an even better medium. Yeah, you all want to come along next week for that. Yep.
But this comes back to the church. I see a line there about if they can't deliver the fossil, then you stop booking them. Unfortunately, I think we need to look at our structure of our churches and centres, because most of them are being run on a structure that was set up in 1910.
Yeah.
And it is not fit for today's world. We are run on volunteers, which we haven't got the access to. We are seeing, in fact, this is funny because we had this discussion with somebody today. We are seeing buildings and centres with very, very large financial reserves being run on a voluntary basis by volunteers, and God bless them. I've got great volunteers at Poole. I just ask and people will step forward, and I cannot work and operate without them, and I am so grateful every day, all day. But I wouldn't put any of them into a position where they would not be comfortable. Now, unfortunately, we do see this in our churches and centres. I know of a case very recently. A guy turned around and said, "Do not make me president. Do not make me president. I don't want the job. I can't do it." Guess what? Because, and sorry, we really have an opportunity here to look at the structure of the governance of our churches and centres. And it's all right saying, well, the medium secretary shouldn't book them. But then if the medium secretary has been put in a position that they're not very comfortable with, and again, God bless them, may not have that understanding or that depth of knowledge to be able to discern, then who is at fault?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not the medium secretary. It's our whole system. So I think we need to look at the whole picture.
Yeah, I think it definitely is the whole picture. And again, we know, and we want mediums and new mediums to have that experience, because I had to have it as well. You had to have it as well going back. We want to be able to allow that. But I guess there's something about when you see someone maybe just had that few months training, or in some cases a few weeks training, and then of course the business card is made up, the website is suddenly up and things, and I have to say, you watch it and it does show, and maybe someone's not told them, look, you really, I mean, at the end of the day, for all of us, I think we all come back to the circle, no matter where we are, and whatever age. There's something about coming to that, and in person when we're together, there's something about that energy in the room that, yes, we can use Zoom and different things like that, but it's not the same.
Correct.
There's that great thing that's missing there. And so do find that, and I think also as well, and I think I have to bring it in. I think because I remember getting this valuable lesson early on, but there's something about that ego as well that comes into, and I was taught way back a very valuable lesson which I've never ever forgotten. But I remember, probably in the first year or two going out and working in churches when I was a lot younger. The hair wasn't grey, and I'm sure it's spiritualism that's caused the grey hair actually throughout.
Undoubtedly.
So I remember going to a church and everything, I have to say, fantastic evening. Everything was brilliant. Everybody could took everything. And I came away with that grin on my face thinking, oh, you've got it. I went to work in another church a week later, and you have no idea how bad this was. I mean, this just wasn't bad. This was, I mean, I just wanted the ground to open up and swallow me. Take me now. And I was sweating. No one could take a thing. Even the philosophy was just... And I just remember coming away and sending that thought up saying, what happened? And a voice as clear as day, I don't know whose, came back and just said, you got too big for your boots, son.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never forgotten that. That was just, I mean, it had to happen, but boy, I mean, we are talking, it was terrible that night.
It's balancing that ego, isn't it? Because we need an ego to stand in front of people. But it's when the ego becomes egotistical is when things start to get muddled. And we return to lovely Welsh Wales with the lovely Margaret. Good evening, my darling. She got great photos. She's doing a barbecue. We weren't invited. It's very rude, isn't it, Ewan? Yeah. Hi and good evening, both and everyone. I always have and did so last night when taking the platform for a demonstration evening. Began the evening with some philosophy. The audience was a wide range of ages and you could hear a pin drop. The attention was full on, and during the demonstration, some of the communicators who came used the philosophy in their messages. I love it when that happens.
Yeah.
People commented how much they learned from the evening. Job done. Yeah. Well done. I love that because it's sowing that seed, isn't it?
I think that's a really important point about when then our loved ones of spirit come through, and they may often than not use something that was in that little bit of philosophy, and of course everything ties together. And I never thought about that, and it is such an important point because it happens when they'll touch on something that was said, or in some way that philosophy that was inspired from spirit in some way then goes on. I mean, let's face it, spirit works in mysterious ways. And people think, people often say, oh, everything just tied together. The reading, the philosophy, the messages. How do you plan all that? And you have to say, we don't meet a few days before. We don't phone and plan it all. It just happens.
Yeah. I love it when the music, because I choose the music for the service. I've got no privy to what the address or the reading is going to be about, but you just find this wonderful synchronicity that runs through, and you think, wow.
And it's just, it just all comes together. Just looking at Ashley, don't we ask a lot of her mediums are single? Yeah, I think we maybe do, but I think it's important, and I think again that's where the old school training comes in, and back to the churches, the circles, etc. And so I think we do. It's not an easy job. I sometimes think that's just my clock going off there, not spirit coming through the chimes there. But I think we do ask a lot, but it's something that, again, that old school training over the years. I mean, I was in a circle. I was in a circle for 5 years before I even.
8 years before I dared go anywhere near a platform, and that was under supervision. Anyway, your clock has brought us nicely to time there. Ewan, thank you.
Thank you again.
Wonderful talk. And great thought. And I love the way just the conversations unfold. Thank you, everybody who's watched us live tonight, and greetings too to those people who may watch us in the future. We hope there's some things in there you can take away and think about and debate and stimulate your growth in conversation. But in the meantime, Ewan, any closing notes?
I loved everybody's comments tonight, because there was some really, really important points in them. And again, it's these points that make you think. I'm going to have a sleepless night now, because I'll be thinking about some of these points, such as, I loved Margaret's comment about the messages coming through which touch on the philosophy and everything. And it's so right, it does. So it's everything there. So, and again, I often wonder, what do they call a gathering of mediums when we get together? We should have a word.
A mob.
A mob. A mob of mediums, but when we all come together, a flock of mediums or something like that. I wonder.
Yeah, there we go. There's homework for everybody watching. What would be the collective noun for mediums?
Collective noun. That would be good to come up with.
No, we can't do the crows, can we? We can't have a murder of mediums.
No, that would be a bit scary.
Yeah, probably not a good idea.
But what's something that sounds quite nice?
Yes.
Meeting of mediums. That sounds a bit bland. I don't know.
Oh dear.
Answers on a postcard, please.
Oh, that's going to keep me up all night now.
Yeah, no, I'm just thinking the same, I don't know.
No, all right.
I can't think. Right. Saturday night, I can't think. I'm needing a glass of wine now.
Yeah. Anyway, Ewan, thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Everybody, thank you for joining in tonight. Look forward to next week, where we have the lovely Angela Foster with us. Oh, Ashley Oliver, a demonstration of mediums.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. A demonstration of medium. That would work.
Yeah, no, I'm not quite sure. No, oh gosh, I'm going to have to hit the cough medicine and see what I can come up with.
I'm just thinking there, amaze that you would go through to find things, because we're all trying to find something and come together. A maze of mediums. Don't know if that sounds right either.
How that?
A maze of mediums. Yep.
No, Leslie Thomas. Look out, they're all jumping in there. Leslie Thomas, a melody.
I like that. A melody of mediums.
Melody of mediums.
I like that. That's tops for me so far.
Oh, there we go then. Anyway, right, before we end up another hour on this.
What your inbox is going to look like tomorrow, I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm not going to go to it. I'll wait until after the service. So, very good night, everybody, and thank you all for joining us.